Differentiate worship role from private merchant vessel role in terms of which country where acquire jurisdiction over crimes committed on board the vessel. Ang worship role ay worship of another country, which considered a extension of the territory of the country even if docked in the Philippines. Worship, ito ang barkong pandigma, pagmamayari ng isang bansa. Kahit saan man ito ang nakadaong whatever crime na makomit doon sa loob ng barko. Ang prosecution niyan sa krimen na yan ay sa country of origin dahil ito ay considered as a extension of the territory of another country. Ang application ng worship rule, hindi lang siya patungkol sa worship, applicable din siya sa airship na pagmamayari ng gobyerno and then embassy. That is why kung may krimen na nangyari sa loob ng embassy ng US dito sa Pilipinas, walang pakialam ang Philippines. Dahil sa loob ng compound ng embassy, yan ay tinatawag na intention of the territory of the US. While private merchant vessel, ito ang pribadong pangnegosyong barko. The Philippines vessel or aircraft must be registered with Maritime Industry Authority. The RPC is applicable in the vessel is in Philippine water or high seas. Kung ang Philippines ship or aircraft na yan ay nasa teritoryo ng ibang bansa, subject na yan na batas ng bansang yan. Magdepende yan sa kung ano ang role na sinusunod ng bansa. In terms of foreign merchant vessels, kung may barko na pribado sa rehistrado sa ibang bansa at saka na sa teritoryo ng Pilipinas, ang barko na yan, the Philippines follow English rule. Ibig sabihin sa English, rule tayo ang may jurisdiction. Kung may krimen na nakomit sa loob ng barko na yan, war is an extension of territory of another country. Kung ang barko na yan ay pagmamayari ng gobyerno, mismo ang isang bansa, kung may krimen sa loob ng barko, kahit ito ay nasa teritoryo ng ating bansa, wala tayong jurisdiction. Ang may jurisdiction ay ang country of origin of the particular worship. In the same manner, ang worship din natin ay nasa teritoryo din ng ibang bansa. May krimen na nangyari doon, ang jurisdiction ay Pilipinas. Number 2. Discuss the reason why the terms of felony and offense are used interchangeably in the revised penal code. The reason why the terms felony and offense are used interchangeably in the revised penal code, dahil kung babasahin mo RPC, may mga articles doon na ang paggamit ay offense or felony. Ibig ba sabihin na ang offense doon ay punished under special law? The answer is no. Simply because ang term na offense ay nakita doon sa RPC. Kahit na offense ang ginamit, it is still to be understood as felony. That is why ang felony, ang offense ay interchanged by use RPC or revised penal code. Number 3. Explain general characteristics of criminal law. In terms of the A, general rule, B, exceptions to the rule. When we say general, it answers the question who the general rule under the general characteristics of criminal law. Is that it is obligatory, ibig sabihin lahat ng obligadong sumunod. That is why in the definition who live or sojourn in the Philippines. Pag sinabing who live, ito ay applicable sa Filipino citizens. Pag sinabi namang sojourn, that is temporary stay in a particular place. That applies to foreigners. Either Filipino citizens are obligated under the law and there is any violation in the law. All have to answer. So that is the general rule. But in every general rule, there is expectation. Ito ang mga exemption. Treaty stipulations, law of preferential application in public. International law. First ang treaty stipulation. Pag sinabing treaty, ito ay agreement but it is with more particular agreement between two or more countries. And then when we say stipulations, it is a provisions in a documents or agreement specifying something that is agreed to. These are specifics of the agreement. In other words, treaty stipulations are the specifics of the agreement between and among nations. The good example for treaty stipulations are military bases agreement. Meron tayong ganitong agreement between us and Philippines. Under this US RP basis agreement to all US servicemen stationed in the Philippines and committing a crime in the performance of their duties are exempted from criminal prosecution. Another example is visiting force accord. Yung mga agreement between our country and US. Any US serviceman stationed in the Philippines will having the military exercise or in the performance of duty as US serviceman exempted sila sa criminal prosecution. So along as the crime committed is in line with performance of duty. Next exception is law of preferential application. Pag sinabing prefer is to choose. Pag sinabing preferential application, merong pagpipili sa pag-apply sa batas. Sabi sa other general characteristics of criminal law, lahat ay obligado, whether Filipino citizens or foreigners are obligated under the law and have to answer any crime in violation of the law. These are laws preferential application. The first one is Republic Act number 75 is penalizing acts impairing proper observations of immunities. When we say immunities, they cannot be prosecuted or not prosecution on any crime committed. Right in privilege of duty. Accredited foreign diplomatic and scholar agents Philippines. The persons exempted are public ministers, ambassadors and domestic servants of public ministers, and ambassadors. Another rule is a worship rule. Worship of another country is considered an extension of the territory of the country. Even if docked in the Philippines, worship, ito ang barkong pandigma pagmamayari ng isang bansa kahit saan man ito ang nakadaong whatever crime na mag-commit doon sa barko sa loob ng barko. Ang prosecutions niyan sa krimen na yan ay country of the origin. Dahil ito ay considered as an extension territory of another country. Ang application ng worship rule, hindi lang siya patungkol sa worship, applicable din siya sa airship na pagmamayari ng gobyerno and then embassy. That is why kung may krimen na nangyari sa loob ng embassy ng US dito sa Pilipinas, walang pakialam ang Philippines. Dahil sa loob ng compound ng embassy, yan ay tinatawag na intention of the territory of the US. Next is public principles of public international law. Under are the persons exempted criminal prosecution, sovereigns and other head of state, charge d'affaires, ambassadors, ministers. There are two types of ministers: plenipotentiary and resident. Not exempted are consuls, vice consuls, and other commercial representatives of foreign nations. Number 4. Explain territorial characteristics of criminal law. In terms of a general rule, be exceptions of the rule. Territorial characteristics of criminal law. General rule, penal laws of Philippines effective only within its territory. Mag-apply lamang ang batas natin sa loob lamang ng teritoryo ng ating bansa. Itong general rule ng territorial concept, ito ay patungkol sa intraterritoriality. Ibig sabihin, our laws apply only within the limits of our territory. In every rule, there is an exception. We have exceptions in the general rule of territorial. In some regards, even if the crime committed happen outside our country. Mag-apply pa rin ba ang batas natin? In some regards, yes. Pasok siya sa exceptions. Ibig sabihin natin sa exceptions sa territorial ay extraterritoriality, meaning mag-apply ang batas natin kahit ang krimen ay na-commit outside the territory. First exception, if offense committed on board on the Philippine ship or airship, there are requisites to consider kung pasok ba ito sa exceptions. 1. The ship or airship is international. Waters not within the territorial jurisdiction of another country. Kapag ang krimen ay nakomit sa loob ng barko, Pilipinas or sa airship ng Pilipinas, ang airship o ship na yan ay nasa international waters or yung tinatawag natin high seas. Ship or airship must be registered in the Philippines under Philippines law. Ang airship o ship ay may requirements na register ito sa pribado. Hindi siya pagmamayari ng gobyerno. Dahil kung ito ay pagmamayari ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas, automatic na yan na kung ano ang krimen na nangyari sa loob ng barko. Yan ang pagmamayari ng Pilipinas. Ay ma-prosecute dito sa Pilipinas dahil tayo ang may palaging jurisdiction over the crime dahil yan ay considered as an extension of the territory of our country. Ang private merchant vessel, ito ay pribadong pangnegosyong barko in the Philippines vessel. Pribadong pangnegosyong barko in the Philippines, aircraft must register with Marina Maritime Industry Authority. The RPC is applicable in the vessel is in Philippine waters. High seas kung Philippine ship or aircraft ay nasa teritoryo ng ibang bansa. Subject na yan sa batas ng bansang yan. Magdepende na yan sa kung ano ang rule na sinusunod ng bansa. Ang French rule ay negative siya dahil ito ay not triable in terms of general rule. At sa English rule naman ay positive. Pero pag dating exception na baliktad na ngayon kasi dito sa exceptions, French rule, if the crime affects the peace and security of country. Now it is triable, meaning positive na pagdating naman sa English. Rule exceptions if the crime affects internal management of the vessel. It will be no longer be triable, that is negative. Ibig sabihin ng exception ng French rule ay kapag ang krimen na ginawa kasi ang general rule di mangingialam ang country. Pero kapag ang krimen na ginawa sa barko na yan ay makakapekto sa peace and security. then that the time that the country will take jurisdictional over the crime. In the case of English rule, sabi triable pero kung krimen ang nangyari sa loob ng barko, only affecting the internal management of the vessel, second exception. Forging or counterfeiting Philippine coin, currency note, obligation, and securities. Ito kahit ng pag-forge or pag-counterfeit ng pera natin o tinatawag na obligations and securities. Kahit ito ay ginawa ang pag-forge o pag-counterfeit sa any country, pag nalaman niya ng Pilipinas, pwede natin lusubin yan at huliin ang taong nag-forge at nag-counterfeit. Third, introducing into Philippines forged counterfeit obligations and securities. Ito ay related sa number 2 dahil dito ang pag-introduce sa Pilipinas. They attempt to import to the Philippines the forged counterfeit obligation and securities. Number 5. Explain prospective characteristics of criminal law in terms of the general rule, exceptions to the rule. Prospective characteristic of criminal law answers the question when general penal laws cannot make an act punishable in a matter in which it was not punishable when committed. Ibig sabihin, ang criminal law ay hindi pwedeng mag-punish sa isang paggawa na nung ginawa ito wala pang batas na nagbabawal at saka nagbibigay ng punishment ng act na yan. Pag sinabing prospective, looking forward, ang batas ay paabante. Ang kanyang epekto, hindi siya pwedeng iatras. Exception dito ay, ibig sabihin, pwede iatras ang batas through retroactive application of penal laws. Ibig sabihin, ang pag-atras ng application ng penal law, pwedeng iatras ang kaso kung ito ay pabor sa akusado. Ang pro reo ay favorable to the accused kung sa akusado ito ay bibigay sa kanya. Sa general rule, hindi pwedeng i-atras, pero sa akusado, basta pabor pwedeng i-atras. Masasabi nating pabor ang batas kung ito ay making penalty for crime lighter at discriminalizing an act. Ibig sabihin, hindi na siya criminal. Ang act merong exception to exception. Balik sa general rule. Hindi na pwedeng i-atras ang batas. Kung ating i-analyze, ang general rule ay hindi pwedeng i-atras at ang exception ay pwedeng i-atras. Ang batas, ang general rule ay negative, di pwedeng i-atras. Ang exception ay positive. Exception to exception ay negative. Balik na siya sa general na hindi pwedeng i-atras. Ang batas kahit na pabor sa akusado, tinatawag natin na exception to exception. New law expressly made inapplicable to pending actions or exciting cause of actions. Ibig sabihin nito kung may panibagong batas na sinasabi doon na merong section doon sa batas na yon, ang batas ay hindi pwedeng i-atras, hindi pwedeng i-apply sa kasalukuyang may kaso sa ganitong krimen. Hindi pwedeng i-atras ang batas kahit na pabor sa akusado kung ang offender ay habitual delinquents. Ibig sabihin nito, if a person shall be deemed to habitual delinquents, if within a period of 10 years from the date of his release or last conviction of the crimes. Serious or less serious, physical injuries, robo, hurto, estafa, o falsification, he is found guilty to any of said crimes a third time or oftener. Number 6. Explain the concept of social contract theory. Social contract theory is an act by which individuals agree to form government according to social contract theory. Governments are established by the people who combine to achieve some goal. Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jacques Rousseau were the founder of social contract theory. They called theories they hypothesize the existence of state of nature prior to any government. According to this theory, an individual surrenders some of his or her liberties to the government and in return the government protects him or her. Yan lang po at maraming salamat.